I stood there in front of the glass entrance of the Rolling Hills Country Club outside Bowling Green, Kentucky, staring at my mother like I'd misheard something. 7 hours. I had driven 7 straight hours from Fort Campbell to get there. 7 hours of construction zones, gas station coffee, and Kentucky summer heat. 7 hours after spending 2 weeks fighting for leave approval, because half my unit was already short-staffed. And now my mother was standing between me and my little sister's wedding. I laughed once, not because anything was funny, just because my brain couldn't catch up. Mom folded her arms. That small, familiar movement. The one she'd used my entire life whenever she'd already made up her mind. Emily wants a small family event. I looked around. Valet parking. 2 white tents. A string quartet near the fountain. At least 100 guests. My father stepped beside her. Rachel, don't do this. Those 4 words. As if I were the problem. As if showing up to my own sister's wedding was some kind of disruption. I looked past them toward the ballroom. People were laughing inside. Waiters carried trays of champagne. White roses everywhere. Not the cheap kind. The expensive imported ones. I knew exactly how much those cost because I'd been paying for family emergencies long enough to learn. I felt suddenly tired. Not physically. Something deeper. The kind of exhaustion that builds over decades. Where's Emily? I asked. Mom hesitated. That was answer enough. I found her near the staircase in her wedding dress. Beautiful, happy, perfect. She looked directly at me. For 1 second, our eyes met. Then she turned away like I wasn't there. That hurt more than anything my parents had said. For a moment, I was 10 years old again. Walking Emily home from school. Helping with homework. Taking a second job during community college so Mom could keep the lights on after Dad got laid off. Wiring money from deployment. Paying bills. Fixing problems. Always me. Mom cleared her throat. You can still watch online. There's a live stream link. My father nodded. That's probably best. I wanted to yell. I wanted to march into that ballroom and expose every lie in front of 100 guests. I didn't. Because sometimes heartbreak doesn't make you loud. Sometimes it makes you quiet. Got it, I said. That's all. 2 words. Then I turned around and walked back to my car. Nobody stopped me. Nobody called my name. Nobody ran after me. I remember that part most. How easy it was for them to let me leave. 12 days later, I was sitting in a motor pool office at Fort Campbell staring at a spreadsheet. My coffee had gone cold. My left knee ached. My phone buzzed beside the keyboard. Mom. She hadn't called once since the wedding. No apology, no explanation. Not even a fake text about things being complicated. So when her name appeared, my stomach tightened before I even touched the screen. She didn't say hello. Why isn't my card working? I pulled the phone away from my ear and looked at it like it might explain itself. The venue called. The final payment didn't go through. I sat back in the chair. Okay. What do you mean, okay? We need you to take care of it. Take care of what? The balance, the wedding balance. I closed my eyes. How much? She exhaled like I was wasting her time. 23,000. For a second, I forgot where I was. The fluorescent lights hummed above me. My coffee sat in a paper cup with my name misspelled on it. You're asking me to pay $23,000 for a wedding I wasn't allowed to attend. Don't be dramatic. That word. After standing outside the country club, after the live stream invitation, after watching my sister look through me like glass. Dramatic. I kept my voice flat. I'm not paying. Mom actually gasped. You have a steady government paycheck. I looked around the office at the peeling chair, the dented file cabinet, the dusty fan failing to cool the room, and I earn every dollar of it. Then she said it. Your name is already on the paperwork. The room went very still. My name is on what? Mom, what paperwork? Finally, she said, the venue documents. Some backup payment thing. Emily said it was standard. My mouth went dry. I never signed anything. A pause, the kind that has fear in it. I drove myself to the venue website, found the number, and called. A woman named Patricia answered in a bright professional voice that faded the moment I gave my name. We've been trying to reach you, she said. 5 minutes later, the documents arrived in my email, my full legal name, my old Kentucky driver's license, my military email, and an electronic signature attached to the agreement. I zoomed in on the signature. The R was wrong. I always looped mine without thinking. Whoever signed that had copied the shape but missed the habit. That small detail made me sick, because it meant somebody had tried. Not guessed. Tried. I thought about 2018, when my father had used my name on a loan application and said later it was just to check options. I'd been furious. Mom cried. Dad apologized. Emily said I was overreacting. So I let it go. That's the thing about letting people cross a line once. Sometimes they don't see mercy. They see a door. I forwarded the documents to my personal email, saved copies, then printed everything. My hands were steadier by then. Not because I was calm, because something had changed. This wasn't family drama. This was my name, my credit, my career, my life. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't asking how to fix their problem. I was asking how far they had gone. The next morning, I was at the legal assistant's office before they unlocked the door. The attorney was a captain named Melissa Grant. Calm voice, tired eyes. She read through the paperwork without interrupting me, and that made me more nervous than gasping would have. Calm people make you wait for the truth. After 15 minutes, she tapped the signature line with her pen. You're saying this is not your signature. It's not. And you didn't authorize anyone to sign on your behalf. No, she nodded. Then you need to treat this as identity misuse and possible forgery. The word sat between us. Forgery. It sounded too big for my family. Too official. Too criminal. I pictured Emily in her wedding dress under all those white roses and my stomach twisted. Captain Grant softened slightly. I'm not telling you what to do emotionally. That part is yours. But legally, you need to protect yourself first. That afternoon, I started calling vendors, venue, florist, caterer, photographer. I kept my voice polite. That took effort. The florist remembered my name right away. Your sister said you were helping with final expenses. The caterer had an email chain where Emily wrote, my sister Rachel is our backup. She's military and very stable financially. Very stable financially. My truck needed new tires. My couch came from Facebook Marketplace. I still bought store-brand cereal. But in Emily's version of the world, no husband and no kids meant a mountain of cash just waiting to sponsor her champagne tower. The photographer sent a signed addendum. Same fake signature, same crooked R. By Friday, I had a stack on my kitchen table. Printed emails, contracts, screenshots, phone call notes. Dates and times in a spiral notebook. I'd spent half my career keeping inventory records clean enough to survive inspections. Once I stopped shaking, documentation came naturally. They had counted on Rachel the daughter. They hadn't planned for Rachel the non-commissioned officer. Then Patricia from the venue called back. Ms. Bennett, there's a recovery email attached to the electronic signature account. It isn't yours. She read it to me. Emily's Gmail, not even hidden. I stood barefoot in my kitchen holding the phone while outside somebody mowed grass and kids laughed and a car door slammed. Normal Saturday sounds. Inside, my whole history with my sister shifted. I remembered Emily at 5 years old refusing to go into kindergarten unless I walked her to the classroom. I remembered buying her a purple backpack when Mom said money was tight. I remembered sending her $200 from a barracks room in Texas when she'd overdrafted again. I had protected that girl my entire life, and she had used the shape of my name like a spare key. Patricia emailed one more attachment, a scan of my driver's license. The second I saw it, I knew exactly where it came from. 2 years earlier, during deployment, Mom said she needed copies of my ID and insurance card for family medical paperwork. She was vague but frantic. Dad was having tests. The hospital was being difficult. She said I was the only one organized enough to help. So I sent it, because of course I did. I called my mother that night. Not because Captain Grant would have approved. Because some part of me still wanted an explanation that didn't hurt as much as the truth. Did you give Emily my driver's license? Silence. Just enough. She needed information for the venue. She needed my ID to forge my name. Don't use that word. There it was. The family translation machine. Theft became overwhelm. Lies became pressure. My anger became cruelty. I asked whether Dad knew. Mom's voice went thin. Your father doesn't need more stress. That meant yes. I sat at my kitchen table until after midnight. 3 nights that week. Maybe 10 hours of sleep total. I ate crackers and cold pizza and handfuls of chocolate chips straight from the bag. Then hated myself for it, which was useless but honest. Monday morning I stood in front of the mirror in uniform. 39 years old, tired eyes. A soldier with bad knees and a family that treated her strength like public property. Part of me almost paid it. I actually opened my banking app and looked at my savings. Not because they deserved it, because I wanted peace. Because part of me thought if I absorb one more hit, everybody can move on. Then an email came in, final notice, my name in the subject line. My name attached to their debt. Something inside me settled, not snapped, settled. I opened a new email and wrote one sentence. I did not authorize these charges and I dispute all financial responsibility. I added the documents, the timeline, the denial. I copied my attorney. Then sent versions to every vendor. After that, I locked my credit, changed passwords, filed an identity theft report, and saved every text my family had sent. I didn't feel victorious, I felt scared. But for the first time since the wedding, I wasn't asking how to save them. I was asking how to save me. For 2 weeks after I disputed the charges, my phone felt like it was under attack. Texts, voicemails, Facebook messages from relatives I hadn't spoken to in years. Every conversation followed the same script. Nobody wanted to talk about forged signatures. They only wanted to talk about how hurt Emily was, how stressed Mom was, how disappointed Dad was. My feelings had become the least interesting part of the entire situation, so I stopped answering emotionally. I responded only through text or email. Short, professional, documented. Once guilt stopped working, my family didn't know what to do. Mom sent after everything we've done for you. I deleted 3 responses before settling on one sentence. Please direct all communication regarding the wedding charges through email. No anger, no defense, just a wall. She hated that. 3 minutes later, my phone rang. Then Dad called, then Emily, then Mom again. I let all of them go to voicemail. That night I listened to the messages on my balcony. Mom cried, then yelled, then accused me of destroying the family. Then Dad's voice, flat and careful. Your mother isn't doing well. Translation, fix it. 20 years of emotional manipulation condensed into 5 words. Then the next morning, a text from my father. I've always been proud of your military service. I sent it to my best friend Angela. We'd served together for years. 30 seconds later. That's worth framing. I laughed so hard I scared myself. Apparently, all it took for my father to respect women in uniform was a catering bill. The following Friday, an unknown number called. I answered. A man cleared his throat. Rachel, this is Daniel. I stopped walking. The parking lot around me disappeared. He spoke carefully. Did you really refuse to come to the wedding? I frowned. What? Emily told me you chose not to attend because you didn't support the marriage. I sat down on a concrete barrier. Of course she did. Simply excluding me wasn't enough. She needed a story. A version where I was the villain. Daniel, I drove 7 hours to be there. Silence. I opened my photo gallery. The timestamp picture of the country club entrance, the date, the time, still there. I sent it. Then the screenshot of the live stream invitation. Then Mom's text, family members only. Watch online. 10 minutes later, he called back. His voice was flat, shocked. She lied. I didn't answer. He already knew. Over the next hour, Daniel told me things I never expected to hear. Emily had been managing the wedding finances, and whenever questions came up, she said the same thing. Rachel will handle it. Rachel has money. Rachel won't mind. Listening to him felt like hearing strangers discuss my life. A version of me that existed only as a resource, not a person. A solution, a safety net, a wallet. Then he forwarded me an email Emily had sent him before the wedding, short, only a few lines. One sentence jumped off the screen. Don't worry about the final balance. Rachel will cover it. She always does. I felt physically sick. Not because of the money. Because of how casually she'd written it. Like she was discussing table linens. Not her sister. I sent Daniel copies of everything. No commentary, no attacks. Just facts. Facts are powerful when they're ugly enough. 3 days later, Mom called from a different number. I answered before recognizing her voice. What did you do? She screamed. You poisoned Daniel against his wife. Not the forgery. Not the stolen identity. The problem was that someone had learned the truth. I waited until she stopped shouting. Then I said the simplest thing I could think of. Mom, if the truth hurts this much, maybe the problem isn't me. Then I ended the call. That night, Daniel sent one message. I've canceled the family brunch. We need a meeting, everybody. The storm I'd been avoiding was finally arriving. And for the first time, I wasn't walking into it alone. The meeting happened on a Sunday at my Aunt Carol's house in Owensboro. Yellow brick ranch house, wind chimes on the porch, ceramic frogs in the flower bed. Most family disasters happen in kitchens. Aunt Carol's smelled like coffee and cinnamon rolls the way it had my entire life. I arrived 10 minutes early. Military habit. You show up early enough to collect yourself. I almost turned the truck around twice during the drive. Then I remembered standing outside that country club. I remembered the live stream link. That memory got me moving. Aunt Carol opened the door before I knocked. 75 years old, 5 feet tall, and tougher than most people I'd met in uniform. She pulled me into a quick hug, no speech, no questions, just a hug. It almost broke me. You okay? Working on it. Good enough. Inside, Mom, Dad, Emily, Daniel, 2 cousins, Uncle Roy. A tray of cookies sat untouched in the center of the table. Nobody looked interested in dessert. The room went quiet when I walked in. Emily stared at her hands. Daniel sat beside her, but not particularly close. Mom crossed her arms immediately. Aunt Carol poured herself coffee. All right, who wants to start lying first? Mom didn't appreciate that. Carol, that's not helpful. Then let's try honesty. Nobody volunteered. Mom jumped in. Rachel has always been difficult during family disagreements. Not hello, not apology. Straight to character assassination. I leaned back in my chair. Emily started crying. Not loudly, just enough. I recognized that too. Tears had always worked like a reset button. People stopped asking questions. People switched into rescue mode. I looked at her for a second, then looked away. Not this time. Dad cleared his throat. We're not here to point fingers. I almost laughed. The fingerprints are literally on the paperwork. Nobody laughed. Aunt Carol looked impressed. Mom looked furious. I reached into my folder. I think we should stick to facts. Mom started to interrupt. For the first time, I interrupted back. Not angrily, firmly. We're doing facts today. I started at the beginning. The drive from Fort Campbell. Being stopped outside. The live stream invitation. The forged contracts. The vendor emails. The scanned license. The fake signature. The payment demands. I didn't raise my voice once. That seemed to bother my mother more than yelling would have. Because yelling can be dismissed. Calm is harder. Every time she tried to cut in, I handed over another document. Eventually, she stopped. Daniel spoke next, his voice exhausted. Emily told me Rachel didn't support the marriage. She told me Rachel didn't want to come. More documents, a screenshot, a timestamp, a photo of the country club entrance. Facts, just facts. Emily finally looked up. I was under pressure. Nobody answered. I was scared. I believed her. That was the frustrating part. I actually believed she was scared. Scared people do stupid things. Scared people lie, but scared people can also ask for help. I spoke carefully. Scared people ask. The room stayed silent. They don't steal. Mom immediately jumped in. Nobody stole anything. That earned her a look from almost everyone at the table. She pivoted. We always knew Rachel would help. There it was. Not an excuse. The actual truth. They hadn't planned to ask. They'd planned to corner me afterward. I looked at my mother. You forged documents because you assumed I'd eventually surrender. She opened her mouth, closed it. Then after nearly a minute of silence, she said something I didn't expect. I sent Emily the documents. Nobody moved. Emily closed her eyes. Dad stared at the table. Daniel slowly leaned back. Mom rushed forward. I thought she'd use them for vendor verification. Aunt Carol set down her coffee cup. The sound echoed through the room. Then she walked to a cabinet, opened a drawer, pulled out a small notebook. The kind older people keep for phone numbers and grocery lists. She adjusted her glasses. Last year, she said, you borrowed $6,500 from me. Emily froze. You said it was a medical emergency. A pause. Was there a medical emergency? Aunt Carol, was there? No, the older woman nodded. That's what I thought. She lifted the notebook. You know why I write things down? Nobody answered. Because I'm old, not stupid. One cousin shifted uncomfortably, then another. Slowly, story after story emerged. Small loans. Missed repayments, money requested during emergencies that suddenly weren't emergencies. Not huge amounts, but a very clear pattern. And underneath all of it, the same assumption. Rachel will fix it. Rachel always fixes it. The realization spread around the table like smoke. Nobody needed to say it aloud. I looked at my sister. Really looked at her for the first time in weeks. She wasn't a monster. She was a woman who had spent years believing consequences belonged to other people. And eventually she'd run out of other people. Then I said the thing I'd been carrying most of my adult life. Not planned, not rehearsed, just true. I'm not your ATM. Nobody moved. I'm not your backup plan. Mom started crying, real crying this time, not performance, actual grief. And I'm not the daughter you hide until a bill shows up. Silence. The kind that settles when everybody knows the truth has finally arrived. Daniel spoke very quietly. I think Emily and I need some time apart. Emily flinched. Mom gasped. Nobody argued, because everyone understood why. When I finally stood to leave, nobody stopped me. Nobody demanded forgiveness. Nobody told me what I owed. For once, I walked out onto Aunt Carol's porch. The evening sun was beginning to drop. The air felt lighter. Not because everything was fixed. Because for the first time, the truth existed outside my head. Everybody had heard it. Everybody had seen it. And nobody could pretend anymore. The venue eventually transferred responsibility back to the people who had actually signed the agreements. My attorney handled the paperwork. The fraud report stayed on file. The disputed charges disappeared from my record. My credit recovered. The damage wasn't permanent. For the first time in months, I slept through the night. When I stopped fixing everything, people started solving their own problems. Not immediately, not gracefully, but eventually. Mom's messages came less often, then shorter, then quieter. A boundary only works if you stop negotiating it. Dad called twice during those months. Both conversations were awkward. Toward the end of the second one, he said something I never expected. I should have said something. I looked out across the parking lot where the sun was setting, a neighbor walking a golden retriever. Kids on bicycles, normal life. I know, I said. Neither of us mentioned the wedding. We didn't have to. The silence already knew what we meant. In October, I moved into a smaller apartment closer to base. Quieter. No unnecessary rooms, no extra expenses, a balcony overlooking maple trees. I bought a used rocking chair for $40 from a couple down the street. Best purchase I'd made all year. A few weeks later, I adopted a rescue dog named Hank, part Labrador, part mystery, entirely convinced every human existed to provide snacks. His muzzle had gone gray. One ear went up, the other didn't. We got along immediately. Two tired souls looking for something quieter. Most evenings we'd sit on the balcony together, me in the rocking chair, Hank stretched across the floor, the kind of peace I'd spent years postponing showing up in small pieces. One evening in November, my phone rang. Emily, I almost let it go. Instead, I answered. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Then she sighed. Not dramatically, just tired. I owe you an apology. Simple, direct. No excuses, no money, no mention of Mom. That got my attention. I was jealous, she said. I almost laughed. Emily had always been the favorite. The celebrated one. The one everybody protected. She understood. I know how that sounds. But you were the person everyone trusted, even when they didn't appreciate it. Those words landed harder than I expected. For years, I'd wanted someone in my family to simply see that. Her voice cracked. I kept telling myself you'd fix everything. Eventually, I stopped seeing how unfair that was. I looked out the window. Rain tapped against the glass. Hank was snoring. I appreciate the apology, I said. We talked for another 10 minutes. Nothing dramatic. Just two adults trying to be honest. When it ended, I wished her well. No promises, no rescue mission. Just well wishes. And somehow that felt healthier than every version of our relationship that came before. A few months later, sitting on that balcony with Hank asleep beside me, I thought about the wedding again. Not with anger, not even with sadness. Just perspective. For a long time, I thought winning would feel explosive. Fireworks. Justice with a marching band. Instead, it felt quiet. It felt like sleeping through the night. It felt like opening my banking app without dread. It felt like answering my phone without fear. It felt like understanding that family can matter without having unlimited access to you. Most of all, it felt like finally respecting myself enough to stop purchasing acceptance. Love without respect isn't really love. It's just another debt. And I was finally done paying it.